Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome into episode 54 of Kayfabe Council, the show where we review and critique news topics and segments in the world of professional wrestling. My name is Pretty Tony, and alongside me, as always, is the goodest of good brothers, the TF Joker. Joker, what's crack, man? What's going on?
Oh, the Good Brothers were on TV this week, so it was a good week. That's just that's basically it. The briefest of briefs, because you always get to say the Good Brother, but they're never on TV. So
Those said good brothers, Carl Anderson and the man himself, the big LG, they apparently have a solid contract in the notion that I hear that if they're not being used on TV, they don't have to travel. So they're getting paid, the brothering up and making it work. So I can't blame them.
yeah, it's all about that money. Those guys know exactly how to negotiate a contract these days. And if I was them, I wouldn't want to turn up either. If I was having to fly everywhere all the time, get a hotel, it's like no. Especially what is it? Carl Anderson has his hot Asian wife, so that he loves to brag about. So it's like, yeah, just stay by the pool. Don't have to travel.
Nothing wrong, man. So I know we've seen AJ Styles, the other portion of the OC, quite a bit more. Haven't seen as much of Mia Yim as well as the Good Brothers, but hey, folks are getting paid and they can make it work. Ain't nothing wrong with that. So, good brothers, good sisters, getting work, getting paid. We're feeling good. We're doing a thing. Can't complain. So,
Yeah, there was definitely some fun had this week in the world of wrestling, and yeah, it was good to see off the back of two pay-per-views that we still had some fun within the shows that we've had between the weekend and now.
absolutely coming hot off the heels of a very busy pay-per-view weekend. Lots of shows going on, lots of wrestling to consume, and this week trying to move things along. Some things happened, some things kind of meandered along. We got an announcement that we'll get into and we'll talk about. We got a little bit of an update from a storyline from this past weekend that we'll also talk about. So I'm not mad at some of the wrestling that we got as a week as a whole. So yeah, I mean, and we're gonna soon get a lot more wrestling in the coming weeks. So it's just something we asked for and we shall receive, and lots to go over. So I'm looking forward to it.
I mean, there's a couple of wee things that I want to be mad about, but you can't be mad about. Like, the fact that we had Montez Ford and LA Knight in a match this week for qualifications for the Money in the Bank. I want to be mad about that because I love LA Knight and I love Montez Ford, and those boys should both qualify. But unless we're doing a swerve and Montez Ford does end up qualifying, I'm still going to be a little bit bummed about having those two in a match and having to pick between your two favorites. It's never fun.
If the one thing for sure about WWE is nothing is for sure, somehow we'll have a second chance, a last chance battle royale, triple threat, four-way match, five-way match, something of that nature. Some of the people that subsequently lost in the previous rounds probably will have another chance to get in. I wouldn't count our eggs in that basket for Montez Ford, but I too would like to see both LA Knight and Montez Ford in there. So I feel you, but we can probably have some positive thoughts going forward as we move on from this particular week in professional wrestling.
Hmm. I'm going to try and maintain a sense of positivity, especially with the topics that we have on discussion for today.
Interesting topics, lots to go over. So let's kick into the show. As a reminder, you can find us in video form at youtube.com/kayfabe council and in audio form at wherever you get your podcasts from. This week's episode, we look at CM Punk announced for AEW Collision and Roman Reigns' 1,000-day championship reign. So, coming up first, CM Punk announced for AEW Collision. Charles Montgomery is coming back, baby. So how did we get here? In a promo on AEW Dynamite, general manager and CEO himself, head of creative Tony Khan announced, quote, AEW Collision beginning at June 17 will feature, dramatic pause, CM Punk. There it is, nice and sweet, end of the promo. So, as we see subsequently in a follow-up tweet from AEW, it was confirmed that CM Punk will return on Collision on June 17th in Chicago at the United Center. So, kick it off. Let's do this thing. My friend, thoughts on the announcement? Charles Montgomery back in the fold, coming back in Chicago at the United Center for Collision's debut show.
Don't mind me just stretching. What a warm up before this really hot take gets me in trouble. We had a couple of shorts a couple of weeks ago where people didn't know what side of the fence to be on. Now, I don't like CM Punk. Personal opinion. I don't like him. I don't care for him. He's not my favorite wrestler. He never will be. But I put out a positive CM Punk uh, sort of stance on one of our shorts and a negative on the other, affirming just how I felt. And people hated me for column A and for column B. So you aren't going to like this either. Didn't care. Literally, as PT was rereading the announcement there, I was like, oh, I have to listen to this again. Like the first time I heard pregnant pause CM Punk, the only reason I was hyped was because I heard boos in the crowd. I heard people booing. I heard people not saying a thing, and I heard the most silent of cheers. I was like, actually, that's the most hype point of this announcement. Everybody knew it was going to be CM Punk. It was all a case of how much was TK willing to give in concession to Punk. You know, if you give him an inch, he's going to take a mile. And I'm just wondering how many miles that CM Punk took, because we talked about this before. He does have to have his own show. And who else is gonna really be the big headliner, the big draw for this? Who's the big name for it? Regardless of those people going, oh, he hasn't been on TV for ages. How much has he really drawn? It's like the name value is still there. He wasn't he wasn't anything to do with professional wrestling for months, but on a rumor sold out the United Center. Hmm. He hadn't drawn anything for about 12 years, but somehow managed to sell out an arena on a rumor. Cool, yeah, that guy's not a draw. 100% he's a draw. Doesn't help that the character is just stupid. So, how do I feel about this announcement? Ambivalent.
Very divisive individual for sure. Say things positive about him, folks get heat. Say something potentially neutral or negative about him, you also get heat. So there's folks that like him, folks are ride or die for CM Punk, folks that just are ambivalent, like you'd said, and don't care for him. So it is what it is. But yeah, it's one of those. It's interesting notion that like you said, the first time around the Rampage, the first dance, I believe they dubbed it, and the rumor not announced, and folks went bananas in that reaction when he opened that show. That music hit the first static and then the first strums of Cult of Personality. So there is something about the man, absolutely. Garner support, whether you are a fan of his or not, there's something about him that gets folks talking. And that's really, you want a reaction in professional wrestling, sports entertainment. That's what you strive for. Never want to have, if you're trying to make an entrance or you're trying to get over in a match, for people to be quiet and sit on their hands. You want a reaction, positive or negative. You want that to feed off that crowd. So, like I said, something about him, but yeah, it's one of those lightning rod elements. And you brought up an interesting notion in your point, the thought of the sort of mixed crowd reaction, for sure. That was interesting. So they had the Tony Khan's announcement on Dynamite on the big screen, and immediately after, they cut to the crowd for a crowd reaction shot, so there was a mixed crowd reaction in San Diego when Tony Khan was announcing Punk's return for Collision here. So even though there was a lot of excitement in the crowd for Punk's return, not everyone was excited. And there was cheers and boos from the San Diego crowd. So once again, a divisive person slash character. Although I have to say, I would assume, and Joker, feel free, it's a strategic move to have Punk return in Chicago. Would you say that's fair?
Oh yeah, 100% agree. 100% agree. Like you said, that first dance playing off the last dance of the Netflix series for the Bulls, Michael Jordan. Um, it's definitely playing up to that home city guy. There was rumors that if this deal didn't go through, that it was supposed to go to Jacksonville. Now the rumors have been potentially unfounded, but of course, if I was close to a deal with the guy, I would also, say, "Oh no, those rumors are unfounded." So take it with a pinch of salt, please. Ryan Satin, Sean Ross Sapp, Dave Meltzer, names on names on names. They're always going to say, "Oh, these rumors are incorrect," but I'm not going to lie, boys. I wouldn't say that the rumors were right if I was trying to get CM Punk onto my team here. So if they weren't going to be able to get Punk, then I reckon that they wouldn't be going to Chicago because I feel like the Chicago crowd being a very hostile, very sort of energetic energy, um, might be hostile towards the fact that Punk's not there and have expectations. Like we said before, he sold out the United Center on a rumor. So how do you feel like this crowd would react if their boy wasn't there? You know what I mean? Now I asked you this last night, and we both kind of agreed. Like we don't really have an idea of if there's any other sporting rivalries, but like it could potentially be something else that's kind of fueling this mixed reaction. I'm not 100% certain that maybe it's just the crowd don't like Chicago or something like this here. Maybe they don't. Maybe not everybody's a fan of a sports team in Chicago. Me not being in America, I'm not au fait with any of the sports team rivalries, for example. So there could be other reasons, but my personal headcanon is I finally have found my people, and my people don't like CM Punk. So there we go.
As far as I'm aware, across the North Americans, Big Four sports, I don't believe that there is a rivalry of sorts between the city of San Diego and the city of Chicago. Let us know down in the comments if you know anything about that. But yeah, it's quite interesting that in the live crowd for Dynamite that happened to have taken place in San Diego, again, some cheers and some boos. So yeah, I think it's a smart move to have him sort of re-debut or return rather in Chicago, his hometown. AW runs Chicago area quite a bit just because it sells quite well. I believe the vice president of live events and things of such was on the Talk is Jericho podcast, and he mentioned as such. So, I mean, you go to where the money is, and if you know the crowds are going to be hot for sure. So,
Oh, 100%.
but in regards to said show on June 17th, the debut of Collision, CM Punk's return in Chicago, he has to open the show with a promo, right? He has to.
100%. I'd like again. We talked about this before. It's not if he's going to do a promo; it's how long is the promo going to be, right? Because there's the whole thing about his I've got to abdicate the title, and he got a 20-minute promo. Whereas whenever Thunder Rosa was, and it was out in the middle of the ring, and whenever Thunder Rosa had to do the same thing, she got a 30-second promo in the back. So the man obviously is given his mic time. So yeah, it's like a case of how long is the promo gonna be, right? Not a case of if he's gonna do one.
I mean, it's a 2-hour show, so we give him 20 minutes to open is a
At least.
yeah.
At least I reckon it has to be a if it's not a 20-minute opener, it's a 10-minute opener and a 10-minute close. Like he opens and he bookmarks the show. Like, I don't know, short of him being on the announce desk as well, I feel like, he's gonna have all the mic time that he wants.
Yeah, it's a fair play. So, CM Punk's connection with AEW and Collision specifically is running a little deep. So, I have note here. In addition to the June 17 Collision show in Chicago, AEW is now advertising CM Punk for the August 12 episode of Collision from the Greensboro Coliseum Complex in Greensboro, North Carolina. So they are advertising Punk for multiple shows. And also of interesting note here, there's a bit of works for me, brother, in terms of CM Punk and creative for Collision. Punk is expected to be the focal point of Collision. A point of intrigue and concern over recent weeks revolved around the involvement of producer Ace Steel and his role in Punk's return, marking several bumps in the road. Now, per report per Dave Meltzer, both Punk and Steele will play a substantial part in shaping the creative direction of the show, particularly in storylines involving the former world champion. Meltzer wrote, quote, "The belief is Punk and Ace Steel will be heavily involved in the creative of the show. At least they will be for Punk's stuff, and the main angles and storylines on the show will revolve around him, and obviously he'll have a great input into that." So, much like I mentioned, it appears that Punk will be sort of the center or the revolving factor, if you will, of Collision in terms of being advertised for multiple shows as well as having a creative input, especially into his own storyline. So interesting, kind of brothering it up. Whether this works for me, brother, or whether this doesn't work for me, brother, should be an interesting parlay to see how the show goes.
Yeah, he's gonna brother this. There's no way CM Punk doesn't turn this into the CM Punk show. Um you love to bring up the comparison sometime of Poochie from The Simpsons. Just to have this fact that he has creative control over everything to do with his storylines, and it's gonna be CM Punk centric, feels like it's gonna be, "Oh, CM Punk's not on stream? Let's have a promo featuring CM Punk. Where's CM Punk now, Alex Marvez? Oh, where's CM Punk now, other person who's just doing a backstage interview? Oh, look, CM Punk's coming to the ring for the 10th time in 30 minutes." Like, I know that's a bit facetious, but still, it definitely reeks of that's how it's gonna play. We all know of the that doesn't work for me, brother Hogan stories from WCW, and that's literally the second coming of that scenario, which I find funny because Punk and Hogan didn't quite get along.
Yeah, Punk has admittedly he's not a fan of Hulk Hogan, so fair play. But being both very popular and very divisive individuals in the wrestling world, sometimes you can draw some diversions or comparisons there. But my first notions were okay in terms of Punk being on Collision. So he's being advertised for multiple shows. So it's not just kind of like a every once in a while, I'll be there maybe once a month type of thing. At least from the beginning or from Jump Street, looks like he's going to be on multiple shows, especially in the beginning. And the fact that it appears as such that he's going to be the focal point of the Collision show. So with having a bit of creative in terms of being in charge or being able to lead the charge in storylines and things of that nature for his own story and things of such, and bringing back Ace Steel, his former trainer, good friend, of course, was involved in that incident that happened back in September. That notwithstanding, I remember reading somewhere that a lot of the kind of bigger folks end up having a lot of creative input into their own storylines, like the elite and such, and Mox and things of that nature are able to talk to TK and the creative team and have a lot of input and provide ideas. So not completely out of the realm of possibility for this to actually be a thing. Maybe it's something that ourselves and maybe some of the media outlets potentially may be blowing out of proportion. But for a guy like that to who has a great mind, a gift of gab, to be able to have a lot of input, let's just say, in the stories that come up with and things of that such, I mean, makes sense. Why not use these great minds and creative folks that you have? For example, like a Punk, we've heard the murmurings of a Brian Danielson having input as well and potentially being a an ear to that. So I mean, hey, if it's one of those things that makes Punk feel comfortable and he can have his say and kind of help create and mold those storylines, which on the surface and possible implications of this being the show for him, I mean, let's see kind of how it goes. Obviously, we're a couple weeks out from the very first episode. Least us not judge yet, but we'll kind of see. But hey, I mean, it sounds like a good deal to me.
I mean, in my positive promo for CM Punk, I did say he was good for business. And CM Punk is good for business. Whether or not you want to admit it or not, the name value alone for CM Punk will draw eyes to your product. It's just what's going to happen. And for him to return to his second home now, which is AEW, he will draw in a lot of eyes. I particularly will want to pay attention to what's going on. I want to see what happens on Collision. But yeah, I feel like we may possibly I particularly in my own detractions from Punk will want to blow it out of proportion that he is going to brother. I'm not. That's not going to work for me. I need 1 hour and 45-minute pipe bombs every week, please, brother. Um, he knows better. He knows better. He'll temper his brother for a while, and then before you know it, we'll have the 2 hour everybody loves CM Punk show. Um, it'll just take a while to get there, but yeah, it's just one of those things that I can see a lot of people fighting on the internet about. Oh, CM Punk isn't good for business. Oh, CM Punk is good for business. Just let me point this out. I still don't care about Punk. If Collision is absolutely gutter trash, I won't be talking about it. Like, did you see Collision this week? No, because I'd rather watch NXT. Spoiler alert: I don't watch NXT because it bores me. So,
Well, begs to be seen. Obviously, we haven't had the first show, and I love the fact that we're using the term brother as both a noun and a verb. I'm loving it. So it's so good. But in regards to the locker room and the reactions to Punk itself, according to a Fightful Select report, there have been no word of any walkout plans, as some of the talent had threatened to do so if Punk did indeed return following the post All Out 2022 backstage brawl. So, no reports as of yet, and doesn't appear anything of that nature. Things are said to have, quote, cooled off backstage, and AEW has taken proper measures to ensure that the talents who have heat with Punk or any other talent are being kept separate as part of the, quote, soft roster split between Dynamite and Collision. As noted, Ace Steel and Punk will reportedly, like we said, be involved with creative for Collision, while most people the outlet spoke to said they believed the situation wouldn't have blown up last month the way it did if Steel hadn't been involved. Several people said that Steele's skill as a coach and a member of the creative team was being underestimated online by many people, and that Steele has been seen as a valuable member of the team before All Out. And one final note here regarding potential pitches. There has been no word in a while of the original pitches for Chris Jericho to work with Punk. There was word at one point of Punk working with Samoa Joe, which is still said to be in the works. With that being said, the word lately is that Punk has enjoyed the work of Jay White, and the Bullet Club Gold could be an early program for Punk. The two takeaways there: the heat ski from September's show All Out seems to have died down, so doesn't to be feel to be any huge dissension amongst the ranks. Obviously, in a perfect locker room or perfect world, folks aren't always going to get along, so and that doesn't have to do with single individuals, it has multiple folks. As we've heard from multiple reports over the last calendar year, so the notion of having sort of folks over on Dynamite, some folks mainly appearing on a collision to help soothe the seeds of dissension, if you will, potentially there. But that last notion of potential opponents for Mr. Charles Montgomery, they heard the names mentioned of a Chris Jericho. We heard a Punk. Lastly, said Punk enjoyed the work of Jay White. So, my man Joker, who do you feel like potentially could be a first opponent, Mr. Charles Montgomery?
I shouldn't really talk about CM Punk as much as we're talking about him because I get heated every single time we're talking about this. I can feel my blood boiling because I just greatly don't know how far to go. I think Chris Jericho is a good shout, and here is my reason. Because again, with our shorts, someone had mentioned that, oh, CM Punk was just defending himself. Defend yourself against Chris Jericho, Punk, because Punk called you so many different things whenever you were off. Defend yourself against Chris Jericho. He should be your first port of call. Chris Jericho's a professional. You give him money, he does the job. He will also put over an awful lot of people. We might see a couple of stiff, couple of stiff moves here or there because maybe Jericho just wants to let Punk know. But I just think that's the right thing because I don't trust Punk not to brother Jay White and be like, "I'm sorry, I'm going over on you, brother. You're not trying to get up in this company. This is America land, and I am going to do everything here for me, brother." I think Jay White deserves a steady push, and to lose to Punk would it just wouldn't do anything for me. It would prove to me that Punk is just going to brother his way to the top, and it would prove to me that nobody gives a hoot about Jay White and his rise and his ascent to stardom in NJPW. Um, like he is Marmite. Now, for those of you who don't know what Marmite is, you either love it or you hate it. It is a yeast extract that people put on food. Personally, I despise it, but I know some people absolutely swear by it. But Jay White is a Marmite kind of guy. You either love him or you hate him. There is really no in between, and I feel like it's just a case of people would be happy to see him win, but people would still be happy to see him lose. But it would do more danger or do more damage rather to Jay White's um, current AEW run to go against Punk. The Samoa Joe thing, I thought was a rumor started by Tom Campbell. I don't of Cultaholic. I'm pretty sure that was where I first saw it. I could be wrong. I wouldn't mind seeing those two because that's fun. But personally, I don't have an idea of who should go against Punk because I'm very scared as to who he would pick because whenever he comes back, he has to build himself back up again. So he's going to have to not necessarily squash people, but he's going to have to get one up on current stars on the roster. And it's who do we think can we sacrifice for CM Punk, not who do we think he should face.
A very interesting point. Of the names mentioned in the report of Chris Jericho, There've been at least heat on a public front in terms of Twitter and some of the words exchanged between both men. So that would be an interesting matchup. Samoa Joe, he and Punk have a lot of history, especially in Ring of Honor and things of such. So Joe always just putting in I think the promo work between those 2 would be absolutely fun and engaging, so I wouldn't be
Oh
mad
yeah,
at that. Absolutely wouldn't be mad at that, and Jay White would be very intriguing to watch there. Much in the vein, I believe Punk's first opponent in AEW was a Darby, so, like, somebody fresher and kind of younger, obviously, that, is trying to make a name for themselves in a new company, and that would be a Darby as well as a Jay White now coming over from New Japan. So quite interesting. But you also brought up the notion of brothering up. Uh, are you saying that Punk's going to win his first match and possible first couple of matches regardless?
100%. I honestly think that the best thing for Punk, because let's face it, he is a two-time AEW heavyweight champion with a grand total of two, I think, two press conferences under his belt, and that has been the length of his reign. He has made it out of the press conference and then had to relinquish the title both times because he's injured himself. I don't think, personally, that we can put him into any title situation, any pay per view situation, without at least letting the man warm up and not pull a tendon, break an ankle, sprain a pinky, have a hair fall out of place in his beard, whatever it does to take to injure this guy, because we need to build him back up again. For me personally, if you want me to believe that Punk is somebody who I should boo as a heel, like make him a heel. If you want me to hate him because he's a good guy, then do that. But you need to build him up. Personally, I just hate Punk. So I'm on a flat kilter here. The character is just nothing to me right now. I don't care enough to boo him. I don't want to even entertain the idea. So it's just one of those that you need to build him up substantially in order to get me to realize, okay, this is of interest. I'm paying attention to you now. Make me want to pay attention to Punk and not just be ambivalent about him.
So we're gonna build Punk up. He's gonna beat everybody, brother up. We're not going the Kenny Omega route where Kenny just loses constantly and then the Phoenix rises and he just goes for broke and does that. We're not going that route?
I mean, we are going to North Carolina for one of the collisions, which is Kenny Omega's second home, because Justin Roberts loves to put emphasis on that North Carolina, and then that whole nonsense, which I find funny. So we could see a loss for Punk there, but that would just be like an in joke. But no, I don't think we should let Punk stare at the lights too often and then have the Phoenix rise. He's not the superhero character. I feel like that's what Kenny is. Kenny is the superhero. After the whole belt collector, he has turned into this baby face, but a lot of people like he's an attraction for AEW. We're happy to see him, but we're not too bummed that he's not around all the time. Well, at least that's my point of view on Kenny. I love Kenny, but again, I'm not too fussed that he's not on the screen. Whereas I feel like Punk's attitude will be, I need to be built up, and I need to be strong. I need to be seen as relevant again. And then from that point, we can use the relevant Punk to put other people over, to maybe put himself over for a little bit. Because whereas before, whenever he came in, I wasn't opposed to the idea of him putting over the younger stars. Now, if he comes in, he's taking away time from people who could be using that time. And I need to see Punk use that time effectively. Otherwise, I will literally be calling for the likes of, well, the women's division to be featured more. which actually, considering who is producing Collision, we could see more of the women's division on Collision. Um, the women's division be pushed more. Griff Garrison and stuff like that. There be pushed more. I would prefer to see those guys, the Dark Order, who we saw for the first time in months on Wednesday. So there's plenty of other people on that roster. That if they don't want to cancel the contracts, fire them, whatever, they could use instead of Punk. But Punk is the draw.
It's never a bad thing when you can get the younger talent, get a little bit of that rub ski from the veteran folks, and especially kind of the bigger stars. And since we've been talking about Punk, so yeah, I mean, I think it would be a good idea again to another show, 2 more hours of TV, more opportunities. We'll see kind of how it plays out. So, all right. So it sounded like we don't have MJF lose to Punk on the first show. We wait before Punk takes the title. Okay. Fair play. So, one last question here before we wrap this topic down. Would there be anybody that you would maybe want to see just have a match with Punk?
As far as who I want to see have a match with Punk, like I feel like some of the uh newer talent that has come in from WWE, I would still like to see some of that happen. Like with I would actually quite like Cesaro and Punk. Um or sorry, Claudio Castagnoli. Sorry, can't use his Fed name. I wouldn't mind seeing a Yuta versus Punk. BCC adjacent, not Moxley. Um, I would like to see that sort of thing because I don't want him to fight Moxley again because he will get injured and then have to take time off. Um, Possibly Sammy Guevara. I'd like to see him face Sammy Guevara. I feel like that would be good for Sammy once we have that opportunity. That would be good. I don't think of any, like I don't really want to pick like huge names. Um, Orange Cassidy versus Punk. Like I just said I don't want to pick huge names, and I'm going after Orange Cassidy. Orange Cassidy versus Punk would be fun, actually. Um, and yeah, I can't think of anybody else off the top of my head, but those ones kind of just jump out at me. For now. What about yourself?
Those are very intriguing matchups. I wouldn't be mad at a Claudio or an Orange because, yeah, it's like, oh, I don't think I've seen these matchups before, and it's a very, very different clash of styles, things as such. So, going back to the original notion, a Samoa Joe versus Punk, kind of a safe bet. I would be okay. Promos would be fun. They have history. You got a built-in storyline there. Obviously, a Chris Jericho and Punk. I'm sure the promos would also be crazy good and just kind of breaking the fourth wall a little bit. And what's a shoot, what's a work, what's a worked shoot, what's a shoot work type of thing would be interesting. But in terms of other folks, you mentioned Claudio, you mentioned Orange, a Wheeler. I wouldn't be mad. Malachi Black just came to mind
Oh
randomly. I
yes,
think would just be a super cool, interesting matchup.
Pac,
Yeah,
Pac.
Pac. Yeah, a Pac now. I don't know if they ever faced off in terms of Adrian Neville and CM Punk, but yeah, I think a Pac and a Punk would be a really interesting and intriguing matchup. Yeah, let's go with those couple of folks, I think. Just because different styles, different style of wrestling and kind of the mannerisms and possible promos, yeah, I think would just be very, very different and kind of cool. So I'd be gauged to see some of that.
Yeah.
All right, so those were our thoughts on CM Punk being announced to return at AEW Collision. Let us know down in the comment section below on YouTube, or hit us up on Twitter, Instagram. Let us know what your thoughts are on Punk returning to the company at Collision, and let us know if you have a particular person in mind to see face CM Punk. All right, next topic here. Roman Reigns, 1,000 Day Championship celebration. So, on this past week's episode of SmackDown, we saw lots of vignettes going throughout the show, looking back at his roughly 2+ year, almost 3 year reign as Universal Champion, getting to that 1,000 day mark. But interesting notion at the end of the show, Triple H comes out and gets on the mic, stands next to a pedestal with a new title belt under a cloth. Hunter talks about the kind of athlete that changes the game, such that they are spoken about for decades. Your Muhammad Ali's, your Michael Jordan's. He says Roman Reigns is in that category. Bloodline make their entrance, consisting of Roman Reigns, Solo Sikoa, and Paul Heyman. Hunter puts Roman over for reaching 1,000 days as champion, the first to do so in nearly 40 years. And he unveils a brand new WWE Undisputed Universal Championship for Roman. Similar design to the WWE and the Universal Championships, but with a gold background behind the WWE logo and the word Undisputed emblazoned on the front. Triple H puts the title around Roman's waist. Roman demands the entire universe acknowledge him. So we see a brand new title design of sorts for Roman Reigns in celebration of 1,000 days being the Universal Champion. So, Mr. Joker, sir, thoughts on the championship belt?
It's all right. It's a color change. It's a color swap. That's all this is. I I was hoping upon hopes that because we got a revamped Big Gold, we were going to get a revamped whatever you want to call the Big W belt. Big W will suffice for now. I was hoping that we would see a little bit of a change. You know what I mean? Like a little tweak to it, something that would kind of mark a sort of new era of the belt. This physical design has been unveiled 4 times in 4 different colors and 2 different stages because you have the old WWE logo with like the jaggedy sort of W.
The scratch logo.
Yeah, The Rock unveiled that one, and then we had Mick Foley and Steph unveil the Universal title with the big red, and then we had the black belt, the updated version of the scratch logo that was unveiled, and then we have this four four identical belts essentially. You know, in kind of looking at them, it's like it's just the same belt but a little bit shinier. You know, this kind of way. I like the gold. I think the gold suits it. The big yellow belt, as opposed to the big blue or the big red. I wasn't a huge fan of big blue or big red. Um, but obviously, I understand from a marketing point of view, the belt is marketable, 100%. I'm not ever going to dispute that that belt is marketable. But this is a multi-billion-dollar company and they have just been bought up by another multi-billion-dollar company. You'd think they might employ one other person in the entire organization with a marketing degree that might be able to come up with some sort of design based around any other version of this belt. Because let's face it, yes, it's marketable, but so are a million other things. We could have at least tried a new belt. If it flopped, it flopped. But at least we tried for another year, and then we unveil a brand new belt when Cody wins it. We go back to the Eagle belt. Fair enough. But to me, it's a wee bit lazy. It's a shinier version of these belts. I just kind of hope Roman only comes out with one belt now and not three, because he did walk to the back with him wearing big gold. Sorry, second big gold, because the other one's revamped big gold. Um, and because this one was unveiled after the big gold revamp, I'm going to call this big gold number 2, which would also peeve Mr. Roman Reigns because everybody has to acknowledge him now. I just kind of hope we have Paul Heyman leave the 2 belts in the back. Like, those are gone. We don't need Roman 3 belts because the 2 belts are superfluous at this point.
When Hunter unveiled Big Yellow, I think it was one of those where I had to watch it back a second time and wanted to get the nomenclature correct. And he definitely said a brand new WWE Undisputed Universal Champion. So using the same terminology, I was trying to think, all right, well, is this a sort of ceremonial, maybe a celebratory thing? It's looking like it's leaning towards this is going to replace the 2 belt piece. So rather than
Mm,
hold the WWE Championship and the Universal Championship, you have the 2 separate titles being represented by one physical belt, the big yellow. So I think it's much akin when you had the WWF Championship and the WCW Championship when they merged after Survivor Series 2001 and Jericho and Hunter were carrying around both belts. We ended up getting a new design to basically have one belt, but then sort of represent, okay, this is sort of the undisputed type of deal. So, and it has that terminology, the undisputed, emblazoned on the front instead of like world heavyweight or universal. It has undisputed. So it's looking like this is the placeholder for representing those two championship, which I'm not mad at. So I think the visual of having two titles makes someone look more important or extra special. You're like, ooh, okay, they're holding two titles, much akin to sometimes we see in boxing where you have like one person come out and they're like, oh, they've got a couple belts. Okay, this, from a cursory glance, this person seems kind of important, like they win a lot. So I don't know, they're going with Big Yellow to have a different kind of skew on it. Makes it feel like they're sort of half merging. There's no official word yet, but one title representing these two physical lineages of the championship. Whether it remains to be seen whether we get official documentation or an announcement, whether or not they merging the two together remains to be seen. But I don't know, it's very interesting and I don't the I was hearing a lot that being shown in the light, the kind of goldish slash yellow background of the piece kind of looked a little gaudy, but when he was in a promo and it was around his waist and the light wasn't directly shining, it looked a little cleaner. So remains to be
mm.
seen. The more we see it, we'll kind of get used to it. But yeah, I mean it's marketable. You go with I mean, I'm surprised they didn't make the WWE logo even larger.
But coming off the belt,
Yeah, just yeah. Like the top of the W's are coming up to his shoulders and stuff like that. So,
yeah.
I mean, it's marketable. Like you said, if I brought up the notion of maybe somebody looking cool having two belts, they look important. The WWE thing, when they give those title belts, those replicas to an NBA team who wins the championship or somebody who wins the Tour de France or, a baseball team that wins the World Series or a hockey team that wins the Stanley Cup, they're like, oh, you see this big old thing and you see that WWE logo, it's they couldn't care less about what it kind of thing, what it represents. They're just like, "Hey, oh, somebody looks at that. What is that? This is okay. Oh, I recognize that's that wrestling thing. Oh, yeah." So,
Mm. Yeah, it's a business card.
absolutely. So, if the design works, it works from a marketing thing. Could we want something a little different? Of course, we can talk all day about that, but I get it. Very interesting, much like the World Heavyweight Championship, the sort of revamped of the big gold that we saw on Raw, now held by Seth. Maybe once we see it for a couple weeks, we'll get used to it, but very interesting design. It's new and it's different.
Yeah, but doesn't really mean that it's good. Like some people will obviously have a negative opinion of it. Some people will have a positive opinion of it. I just think it's a different color of the belt that we already know. Therefore, it's getting rid of the only problem I have, Roman having two belts. And unfortunately, they've added Undisputed onto that, which to me, Undisputed needs to mean undisputed. You can't be undisputed if there's another heavyweight title on the other show. Like you're in the same company. This is not a rival promotion. To bring that back to boxing, that is what happens. Like they will go to other promotions. They will fight for other belts. They will be heavyweight champion in multiple companies. That's why we have all these belts. You even have the same thing with UFC champions holding all of their different the different times that they've had their belts, like you see them posing with those. It's the same with other sports that have belts. In terms of pop culture, the wrestling industry, WWE particularly, are synonymous with the cummerbund belt, the big belt. sort of design, and it's just one of those that everybody's going to know or at least assume that it's a WWE belt until you look and see UFC or whatever it says on there. Um, so from that standpoint, it's just one of those things that it's kind of a bit laughable to me. Um, but yeah, I don't understand why we put Undisputed on there when I can think of the fact that Seth Rollins now has a dispute with the fact that he is a champion of the other brand within the same company.
It's fair play. It's an interesting argument. Two world champions can't necessarily be undisputable if there's multiple. So it's a marketing thing. Hey, I was previously holding two different world championships. And because I'm part-time now, brother, that didn't full-time doesn't work for me, brother. So I made it work and it's a marketing deal. So we're gonna dispute the undisputed nomenclature of whether or not it is indeed undisputed, perhaps.
I mean, I reckon somebody was just bored of having to pay extra for extra weight on their carry-on luggage every time they traveled. Bringing two belts is just too heavy, so knock it down to one. It's easier to manage.
But we see the celebratory new championship created for the representing of Roman Reigns 1000 days as Universal Champion. Roman tries to get not the local crowd, not the town, but the entire universe to acknowledge him. But enter the Usos. And everybody freaks out as they are not supposed to be at SmackDown. Jimmy Uso squares up to Roman Reigns, mic in hand. Roman tries to tell Jay to kick his brother in the face, but Jay doesn't budge. Reigns reiterates his demand and tells Jay to fix this by kicking his brother in the face right now. Jimmy tells Roman the only one that needs fixing is him. Jimmy says Jay can't fix this, and he did what he did in Saudi not to be the tribal chief, not to lead the bloodline, but because he was being a brother. Brothers treat brothers with love and respect, and lately Roman hasn't been such a good brother. Jimmy asks what kind of brother hurts, betrays, and lies to his own family. Says Roman has gone crazy. Jay is his brother. It's embedded in him to protect. And so is Solo. And he warns Solo that Roman will use him, abuse him, and kick him in the dirt. Roman takes claim for the Uso chant from the crowd and reminds us that he's the tribal chief. And then asks Solo Sikoa how he feels. Who's Solo's loyalty to? Solo considers the mic for a moment before acknowledging his tribal chief, but reminding Roman that the Usos are his brothers. Solo hands the mic back to Reigns and steps over to stand with the Usos. Jimmy gets on the mic and asks Roman, how's it going to be? Does he want to run this together with respect? Or is he going to end up on the island of relevancy as the tribal chief all by himself? Roman tells Jimmy to shut up, but Jimmy pie faces Roman Reigns and cuts him off. Jay takes over and says, not like this. He needs Jimmy, he needs Roman, both. Jay says they're family and they're better than this to fight each other. Jimmy agrees, gets back on the mic, telling Roman they're stronger than this. Roman has always been his brother too. He wants to run this damn place together with respect. He says they're the bloodline, they're family, they're still the ones, right? Roman wipes the sweat off his face, struggling before embracing Jimmy and hugging him tight. Jay collapses against the ropes in relief, clearly emotional. Roman raises the microphone to his lips and says, no. Solo hits the Samoan spike on Jimmy. Jay checks on his brother, conflicted and choked up as Reigns walks away. On his way out, Paul Heyman asks Roman about Jey Uso. And Roman says Jay's going to fall in line like he always does. Curtain down. We see the follow up from Night of Champions from this past weekend's pay per view. Of course, with Jimmy hitting the shot on Roman. Super kick twice, eventually costing both he, Roman, and Solo, the undisputed WWE Tag Team Champions, Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens, their championship from the Bloodline. Jimmy comes back, bows up, said it was just about respect. Not trying to be the tribal chief, not trying to be the leader. It's about respect, it's about love, it's about being a good brother.
He's not wrong. Like, come on. Like this I went into this segment as soon as that Uso music hit. Like I was excited to see the bloodline just crumble. I was excited to see some stuff, and then Jimmy Pie faced Roman. I was like, this is it. Super kick to the face, Jake. Kick him in the face. And then, I was excited. I was like, there's something going to happen. Because, like I said, the bloodline stuff is only interesting when the Usos are there. From my point of view, I haven't been interested in anything Roman's had to say because he is honestly the most boring part of the Tribal Chief storyline. And he is the Tribal Chief because he's just not there. He comes in for like, a week out of the month and we have to believe that he's super awesome, but everybody else is cutting really cool promos and the wise man's doing all his talking for him. So I'm like, we're scared of a specter? Like, no. So yeah, Jimmy was 100% leading me along this path. I love this promo about how it's about respect. He wasn't trying to be the tribal chief. He wasn't trying to bring down the bloodline. He wanted to beat some sense into his cousin. And it just kind of came about that I felt myself going, actually, I don't want the blood. I want this reformation. I want them to sort of gel and be stronger than ever. And I would actually be okay if they did that with Roman having his title for another 6 to 8 months. Like, I don't know, suppose, we can work with it if he's going to be part time. And that's coming from a huge Roman detractor that, I thought that WrestleMania was the peak of this. I have been bored ever since. We're only doing this for numbers, for the undisputed title, and it's pointless to me. So don't get it twisted. I really don't want him to hold the belt, but if they went down that route, I would have been okay with how things could have been planned out. But equally, I'm good with this. But I felt like the little solo part was like, there's your red flag. Like he says, I acknowledge you, my tribal chief, but them right there, they're my brothers. And then he stood on the right hand of Jimmy and he had the hand taped up. Like, come on. If you're gonna make it look like, he's gonna turn on him like secretively or just all of a sudden, have him use a different move other than the Samoan spike. Because the fact that he came out to the ring with the spike, with the hand taped up for the support for the spike, I just saw it and went, okay, so what? Solo's gonna spike Jimmy, and then they're gonna leave, and it's all a big swerve. Like, come on, it's everybody sees that from a mile away. And then it happened, and I was like, see, it just kind of it's predictable, kind of boring actually. The one thing I did like though was Jimmy pie facing Roman because it was that kid who'd had enough of being mistreated, being disrespected, and he stands up for himself and he's like, "No, I will have no more," and he pie faced him. And then you had that nervous brother slash best friend energy from Jay, who's just kind of like, "Oh, woe is me. What do I do? What's going on? I don't want to get into a confrontation." Um, and I honestly feel like the Usos are the more interesting point of this because is Jay really going to fall in line? Because I feel like his sort of idea of this is I'm doing this for my brothers, and now my brother wants me wants me to stand up against my family who I want to protect, but he is going to have to see that the tribal chief is the one that's doing the damage to the family. I don't think they're going to get Solo out of this without beating him, or at least having helped beat him, which would make Solo look really good. But we have to remember that Solo is there in terms of storyline by order of the council, of the head guys of the tribal chiefs, etc. You know, in terms of storyline, he's the enforcer of Roman. So again, he is their brother, and he acknowledged that as such. But the fact that he acknowledged the tribal chief means that he understands what his job is, and he knows what he has to do. So I think it's on the Usos here to prove that the big Us, Roman Reigns, is no longer worthy for Solo to follow blindly in that regard.
The Usos, man, coming in. They've been the torchbearer for this whole thing with
Mhm.
Roman, especially in the latter, what, year and a half to 2 years now, going part time. The Usos, much like we talked about in previous episodes, have been doing a lot of the legwork, been showing up, showing out, had what, 500 plus days as the tag team champions. I mean, they were just having match after match against, all the tag teams and then multiple tag team match rematches against because they just were running through guys and then we're putting
Mhm.
singles guys together for them to face. So, in terms of just holding it down, the Usos have been 100% the sort of focal point and the pivoting point because we have things with the Usos in terms of the Sammy chapter that lasted what, the 9-10 months, and then we had things now with Solo, his interactions and their all character work with him. Of course, obviously with Roman, we've seen elements with the Paul Heyman, right, the Council, and then of course we've seen in and amongst each other with Jay and Jimmy together. So I mean, they whether you're a fan of the Bloodline work or you're not, you gotta give the Usos a credit in a company which for many years that is not a fan of tag teams, and a lot of times you'll break tag teams up, but we've seen an interesting notion of having a tag team pushed to the top in a marquee spot in a storyline that's what, going on 2 plus years now and has weaved in and out of multiple shows and you have the main event of WrestleMania, like, it's crazy, so there's something about them as well that we were infatuated with them, especially last year in the second half of 2022, especially, see multiple shorts that we have up on the channel, but these guys have just been continuing to knock it out of the park. Jimmy, much like you said, in terms of having enough, somebody who just said, "Hey, like, tired of the manipulation and things of such, and I'm not trying to be the boss, but you we're family and you need to recognize that." And he's been pie faced multiple times by Roman, so to get one in there and the pop of that crowd was really incredible. And Jay's character work, Jay in the background, didn't have a mic, didn't speak on the promo, but you heard him. His acting. We don't give out Oscars for wrestling. Man, I gotta give Jay his flowers officially, unofficially right now. We haven't already that he is always thinking about the family, trying to hold it together. He's always running into conflict in terms of someone quote unquote going rogue or trying to break this family apart, but he's always been focused on I'm trying to protect, whether that's from within or from in external factors. But he's always trying to keep focused on all right, we need to keep this thing together because I love my family. And Jimmy at this point, it's the fractor. We saw a little bit of that Sammy thing too, and the conflict there before. So Jay just killing it solo, like you said. Maybe it's that nature of trying to figure out, because I've been appointed by the highest of the high tribal council to be his enforcer, to be his bodyguard, to be his number two, and sort of the protector, if you will, the sergeant at arms. He's trying to toe the line. He loves his brothers, but he's trying to find his position and find his way in this structure, in this family, in this bloodline. So I gotta say, much like we said, we were a little maligned after the Sammy portion of the WrestleMania. We were trying to figure out where we're going here, revitalizing a little bit of energy back into the storyline. This is another phenomenal segment. And that ending notion of Roman just saying Jay will fall in line. Will he? Is the bloodline fractured? Are we crumbling a little bit? What are you thinking may be the next story beat that we hit?
It it's really difficult to tell, um, because unfortunately we've just had this belt reveal. Unfortunately, we're now at 1,006 days for Roman's title. 1,007 at time of recording, 1,008 at time of release, and counting. So let's continue on with that. And it's hard to tell where this goes. Now, there has been the old rumors that I love to read the rumors because sometimes you get the wee ounce of truth in there what they want to do. And then sometimes it gets the old noggin thinking like, what could happen? And there's talk of making Roman a super babyface. Now, there's only one way to make Roman a super babyface, and that's to take the title off him and make him go away and have him come back and protect family. Like it's convoluted, yes, 100%. But if you want to make a super babyface, but this man wants to be part time, then he's obviously going to have to go away for a while. Personally, I don't know whether or not they are going to go down the line of punishing Jey Uso, or Jimmy Uso rather, to spur Jey to take on Roman one more time, only for Roman to beat Jey, but to also burn bridges with Solo by maybe accidentally attacking Solo whenever Solo was only trying to help. You know, that kind of thing, because it's going to be a case of Solo maybe tries to interfere to spike Jay. Jay moves out of the way. Roman spears him. You know, kind of like what we did with the ref bump sort of thing. But then Roman ends up beating Jay anyway, and we have somebody else come in and beat the really now super alone and weak Roman Reigns. Who that would be, I've honestly no idea. Take a take a pick. Possibly Drew McIntyre if they decide that they want to pay him the big bucks again. Um, but I honestly feel like if we are to do anything with the bloodline, it has to be bloodline only, and we need to finish this part of the cracks within the bloodline. We can't go. Roman can't have another opponent. If Roman has another opponent that's outside the bloodline, it's going to take away from this story. It's going to prove to me that the Usos are the only thing that's holding this thing together, and that Roman is honestly just in it for the days. Or sorry, being booked to be in it for the days. So I definitely want to see Roman versus Jay Part Two in a Hell in a Cell, um, which is how this whole thing started.
I've been also hearing that they eventually want to have Roman be the superhero mega baby face, a la akin to a Cody Cena or a John Rhodes, if you will. It's one of those interesting notions that we've been pushing Roman since 2015. Since that Rumble win on through till now, we've been pushing him nonstop for the
Mhm.
most part. Maybe suffice to say for little times off here and there, and maybe his little sort of sequester in roughly late 2018, 2019 before he ended up being in the main event once again. But The fact that now he's a bad guy and still being pushed, and now folks kind of dig him because he's a little bit different presentation. So, not to say that we as fans are fickle or anything, but he's being pushed regardless. You know, he's been the guy since 2015. He's not a guy, he's the guy per se, but yeah, to be a heel that's cheered because he's kinda cool and he's got a little bit different presentation. You want him to be the all-conquering super face hero, superhero character, if you will. But yeah, they have to change up the presentation a little bit. He may not have to have a stable, 'cause when you have, like, managers and kinda heaters that essentially Solo and the Usos are to him, not really a babyface thing. You're not gonna kinda be a, hero character with sort of that, or if they change it to, you know, we got it the presentation a little bit. We can't have the ref bump every match. We can't have the bloodline interferes on your behalf. You can't be a babyface like that. So you gotta
Yeah,
change things up if that's the ultimate goal, but I think that's a fair idea that his next title defense, what, at WrestleMania, we don't have to have a defense at SummerSlam. We don't have to have a defense at Survivor Series or Royal Rumble. Like, I mean, it doesn't really mean at this point. But that notwithstanding, if we have somebody else, you know, who's it gonna be? An LA Knight cashing in his Money in the Bank type of thing, or if that's
yeah.
Austin Theory gets a random match with Roman or something of that nature, I do feel
No,
like it might take away from what's kinda going on with the ultimate bloodline portion of it, because we're coming to a head here with, all right, Jimmy's having enough, and the kettle is boiling, or the pot is bubbling a little bit with the lid on. So it would make sense for them to do something, whether that's sort of a match or whether that's type of thing. I've been hearing murmurings of Usos versus Roman and Solo at Money in the Bank in London. So maybe that could be a thing where they're like, "All right, we're family. We need to settle this in the ring. Win, lose or draw, we just need to get our aggressions out so that we can just beat seven shades out of one another and we can be reunited yet again, even stronger. We're stronger in battle. We faced each other. We know we can't lose now." Okay, type of thing. So maybe that's an idea, but we'll kind of see how it needs to go. And it's one of those, I don't want it to drag on super long, because we get these weeks without Roman and kind of nothing happening, and we want to have Paul Heyman just say something to the Usos, or Paul Heyman say something
mhm.
to Solo. So let's see if we can maybe have some sort of next steps and not feel like it drags on, I guess, would be my ultimate goal.
That is the main thing.
If we can drip feed it a little bit to where it doesn't feel like it's dragging, then I feel like that works for everybody.
I feel like we're already drip feeding Roman enough to the point where anymore, like, if we try to stretch this out anymore, it's going to be kind of meh. Like, I didn't mind the taking a break between WrestleMania and till after Backlash and things like that. There, like, I was whatever, that's fine. But this is the most pressing thing for the Bloodline. Roman doesn't have an opponent for anything. He's not going. It looks like they're finally done with the Kevin Owens and Sammy stuff. So yeah, where do we go?
Would you be okay if we ended up having at Money in the Bank or at SummerSlam, Usos versus Roman and Solo, and we had another sort of moment at the end of the match slash right after, where we get the next portion of the story leading it after that?
I'd be okay with that. Like, if we did a final crumbling of the bloodline and it was only Roman and Solo left, or if we had them come back together and reform, like, as long as we had something definitive, like if Money in the Bank is the end of the internalized beef, I'm happy with that. I don't want it really to go on too much further. Um, because like what's the next one after that? SummerSlam? Like we've got SummerSlam. It's like a wee bit too far away. I don't really think there's enough legs to this that we haven't already explored earlier in the Bloodline history. And for those of you who haven't seen the Bloodline history and how this started, first of all, maybe you should go back and find out how your tribal chief became the tribal chief. But second of all, Jimmy was assaulted by Roman to force Jay to quit in Hell in a Cell and therefore begin the actual bloodline, not the tribal chief stuff, because that's how he was sort of portraying himself already at that point. But this bloodline, Roman started by beating on Jimmy to force Jay into submission. I want them, Jay and Jimmy, to take their pound of flesh. I want them to put up a really good fight, for Roman to be the one to hit Solo accidentally, much like Jay and Jimmy did at Night of Champions, and then for that point, for the whole story to sort of come crumbling down around Roman. And if we're not thinking about numbers, maybe finish things at SummerSlam with Roman's reign, or even have the Money in the Bank winner cash in on Roman during the tag match for the actual title, impromptu bish bash bosh. Have LA Knight become the champion as soon as possible because we all know that everybody loves LA Knight.
Yeah.
There we go.
All right, remains to be seen what will eventually happen, but looks like it's leaning towards a little bit of an internal rivalry, internal feud, internal beef, whatever you'd like to call it. So, which here's Joker and I would be satisfied with that for sure. But with that, those were our thoughts on the new championship title for Roman Reigns, the 1,000 Day celebration, Usos' confrontation with Roman, and possibly what's next for a seemingly crumbling bloodline. Let us know down in the comment section below on YouTube or hit us up on Twitter, Instagram, and let us know what your thoughts are on Roman Reigns' 1,000 Day celebration and what's next for the bloodline. All right, that about wraps it up for us. Interesting show here, talking about a lightning rod of an individual for both WWE and AEW. And it turns out, by way of a happy accident, we're talking about being a good brother, Joker.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's all comes full circle. We start by talking about the Good Brothers. We finish by talking about being a good brother and a good family member, and that's all really anybody can ask of each and every one of us.
Gotta love a little bit of symmetry from someone trying to brother up to being a good brother. You always want to look out for the ones that you care about. You always want to be level headed. You always want to be looking out for yourself, but then looking out for each other as well. So, turns out you want to be good to the people that you love, your friends, your family, and your coworker, because you need to work with these folks. And it turns out being a good brother means you got to be a good brother.
This is something that some people may have to find out the hard way when they return to the United Center.
There we go. So appreciate everybody coming along on this journey with us. Hope you enjoyed the show. We're going to wind on out of here. So for TF Joker,
That works for me, brother.
I appreciate that. Also works for me, brother. And for me, Pretty Tony. We thank you for your time, letting us be a part of your day. And remember, be good to yourself, be good to each other, and we will catch you next time. Peace.